My brother forged my signature to steal my house while I was presenting medical research overseas. Hi everyone! Today's story will blow your mind, but really quick, if you enjoy this content, hit that subscribe button. Channel's been a bit quiet lately, and your support keeps it all going. Let's jump in. When your brother decides your house is community property. I'm sitting in my hotel room in Munich, still wearing my conference badge from presenting my research on neural interface calibration systems. It's 2 a.m. local time, and I should be celebrating. My presentation went perfectly. 18 months of work on adaptive biomedical sensors finally validated in front of the international medical engineering community. Instead, I'm staring at an email from my neighbor asking why there's been surveying equipment in my yard for the past 3 days. Let me back up. I'm Marcus, 31, biomedical engineer at Cleveland General Hospital. I design and develop medical devices, mainly neural monitoring systems for ICU patients. It's demanding work, but I love it. My older brother, Derek, 33, owns a lawn care business called Premier Green Solutions. We've always had a complicated relationship. He dropped out of college, I got my master's. He parties every weekend, I spend mine in the lab. He's asked me for money countless times over the years, and I've always said no after watching him blow through our grandmother's inheritance on boats and ATVs. The house in question is a modest 3-bedroom colonial I bought 4 years ago in a decent Cleveland suburb. Nothing fancy, but it's mine, or at least, I thought it was. I purchased it entirely with my own savings and salary. Derek has never contributed a penny, never lived there, never even helped me move in. He did offer to do my lawn for free, which lasted exactly 2 visits before he started forgetting. When I got my neighbor Janet's email, my first thought was that maybe the city was doing some infrastructure work. I thanked her and said I'd look into it when I got back. But something nagged at me. Derek had been acting strange before I left, unusually interested in my travel dates, asking multiple times exactly when I'd return. He even offered to watch the house, which should have been my first red flag. Derek doesn't watch anything that doesn't have a motor or a betting line. Unable to sleep anyway from jet lag, I logged into my county's property records website. What I found made my chest tighten in a way that had nothing to do with the conference coffee. According to the official records, as of 6 days ago, my house was now owned jointly by Marcus Chen and Derek Chen, with rights of survivorship. I stared at the screen, refreshing it 3 times, certain I was misreading something. But there it was, a deed transfer document, allegedly signed by me, adding Derek as co-owner of my property. The signature looked close to mine, but the date was when I was 30,000 feet over the Atlantic. The notary seal belonged to someone named Bradley Morrison, whose address turned out to be one of Derek's drinking buddies. My hands shook as I scrolled through the rest of the document. Not only had Derek added himself to the deed, but there was also a lien filing from just 2 days later. He'd taken out a $75,000 loan against our house from some hard money lender called Quick Capital Solutions, at what looked like an 18% interest rate. I immediately called my bank. After 20 minutes on hold and explaining my situation to 3 different people, they confirmed what I feared. While the house was still physically mine, legally, Derek now owned half of it. And that loan, it was secured against the property. If it wasn't paid back, they could force a sale. The conference had 3 more days, but I couldn't focus on anything. I attended the mandatory sessions for my grant requirements, but spent every break on the phone with lawyers, police, and my bank. The police in Cleveland said I needed to file a report in person. The lawyers I called said this was clearly fraud, but proving it would take time. The bank said their hands were tied until the legal ownership was sorted out. I caught the first available flight home, cutting my conference short. The 12-hour journey felt like 12 days. I kept checking the property records, hoping somehow this was all a mistake, a glitch in the system. But each refresh showed the same thing: Derek Chen, co-owner. Landing in Cleveland, I went straight to the police station, not even stopping at home first. The detective who took my report, Detective Sarah Kowalski, was sympathetic but honest. "These cases are tricky," she said, typing up my statement. "Your brother will likely claim you gave him permission, maybe verbally agreed to this before you left. The forged signature is good for us, but we need to prove it's forged." "I was literally on another continent," I said, showing her my passport stamps and boarding passes. "That helps," she nodded. "But he could claim you pre-signed documents. We see this a lot with family fraud. The victims often don't want to prosecute, and the perpetrators know it." "I want to prosecute," I said immediately. "This isn't a misunderstanding. He stole from me." She gave me a case number and said a detective from the Financial Crimes Unit would be in touch within 48 hours. I drove home in a daze, pulling into my driveway. Was it even my driveway anymore? and found Derek's truck parked there. He was in my backyard with another man, both of them measuring and taking photos. They had architectural drawings spread on my patio table. Derek looked up when he heard the gate, his face cycling through surprise, guilt, and then settling on fake enthusiasm. "Marcus, you're back early, bro." He jogged over like nothing was wrong. "This is Tom, he's a contractor. We're just getting some estimates." "Estimates for what?" My voice was steadier than I felt. "For the expansion. I figured we could add a mother-in-law suite, rent it out. Good income, you know. Since we're co-owners now, wanted to increase the property value." The audacity of it, standing in my yard, planning renovations to my house, acting like this was all normal. "We need to talk. Alone." Derek told Tom he'd call him later, and we went inside. My house smelled different, cigarette smoke, which I never allow, and pizza boxes were stacked on my kitchen counter. He'd clearly been here while I was gone. "Derek," I started, but he cut me off. "Look, I know you're probably surprised, but this is actually good for both of us. My business is expanding, and I needed some capital. You never use your equity anyway, just letting it sit there. This way, we both benefit. The loan will be paid off in 6 months from my new contracts, and you won't even notice." "You forged my signature." He actually laughed. "Come on, we're brothers. It's not forging when it's family helping family." "That's exactly what it is. It's also fraud, identity theft, and about 5 other felonies." His expression hardened. "You really want to do this? Make it a whole thing? I'm offering to cut you in on my business success, and you want to call the cops on your own brother?" "I already did." The silence that followed was heavy. Derek's jaw clenched, and for a moment, I saw something ugly flash across his face. "You always thought you were better than me, with your degrees and your hospital job. But you know what? I'm the one out there building something real, not just playing with wires in some lab. Get out of my house." "It's our house now," he smirked. "I have just as much right to be here as you do." Technically, horrifyingly, he might have been right. I couldn't legally evict him if he was on the deed, even if that deed was fraudulent. The law would need time to catch up to the reality. "Fine," I said. "But I'm changing the locks on the bedroom doors. Stay out of my space." The next 2 days were surreal. I installed new locks on my bedroom and home office, essentially barricading myself in parts of my own home. Derek came and went as he pleased, sometimes bringing his buddies over, treating my living room like his personal clubhouse. I documented everything, every time he entered, every person he brought, every item he touched. Detective Rivera from Financial Crimes called on day 3. "Mr. Chen, I've reviewed your case. The good news is, your travel documents make it clear you couldn't have signed those papers. We've also found some interesting patterns. Your brother has significant debt, about $200,000 across various creditors. His business has been hemorrhaging money for months. This loan against your house? It's not his first attempt at fraud, just his most ambitious. There's more. We're pulling records now, but it looks like he's been falsifying contracts, claiming bigger jobs than he actually has to secure loans. He's been running a shell game, using new loans to pay old ones. Your house was probably his last resort." The investigation moved faster than I expected. Within a week, they'd frozen the fraudulent deed transfer and arrested Derek. The hard money lender, it turned out, was already under investigation for predatory lending practices and was eager to cooperate when the police came knocking. Bradley Morrison, the fake notary, flipped immediately, admitting Derek had paid him $500 to notarize the forged documents. But the investigation also revealed the scope of Derek's deception. He hadn't just defrauded me. He'd been falsifying client contracts for his lawn care business, claiming he had agreements with major commercial properties he'd never even bid on. He'd used these fake contracts as collateral for multiple loans, creating a paper trail of fraud that went back 2 years. Update 1. The investigators found so much more, 2 weeks later. I thought I'd give an update since my last post got so much attention, and honestly, writing this out helps me process the absolute insanity my life has become. So Derek was arrested last week, and I assumed that would be relatively straightforward. He forged my signature, there's clear evidence, case closed, right? Wrong. What the Financial Crimes Unit uncovered when they started pulling threads has turned this into a full federal investigation. Remember how I mentioned Derek's lawn care business, Premier Green Solutions? Turns out, it's been insolvent for almost 18 months. But you wouldn't know it from the paperwork he'd been filing. Detective Rivera called me yesterday with an update that left me speechless. Derek had created an entirely fictional business empire on paper. He'd forged contracts with 6 major commercial properties in Cleveland, including 2 hospitals, not mine, thankfully, a shopping center, and 3 office complexes. These contracts, totaling about $1.2 million in supposed annual revenue, didn't exist. The property managers had never even heard of Premier Green Solutions. But here's where it gets worse. He'd used these fake contracts as collateral for loans from 5 different lenders. Not just the hard money loan against my house, but legitimate bank loans, equipment financing, and even an SBA loan he'd somehow qualified for. Total borrowed, $485,000. Of that money, exactly 0 went to legitimate business expenses. The investigators found he'd been using new loan money to make minimum payments on old loans, classic Ponzi scheme behavior. The rest. Gambling, a boat he bought last spring, a motorcycle, and, this one hurt to learn, a down payment on a condo in Florida that he'd been renting out on Airbnb. Detective Rivera explained that my house was his exit strategy. His plan, from what they've pieced together from his emails and texts with Bradley, the fake notary, was to take the $75,000 hard money loan, make one last big bet to win it all back, and if that failed, he'd disappear to Florida. He figured I'd be too embarrassed or family loyal to pursue charges, and eventually, I'd just pay off the loan to save my house. But the most infuriating part? He'd been in my house the entire week I was gone, and not just hanging out. He'd gone through all my files, photographed my financial documents, even tried to access my investment accounts. My security system recorded him at my desk at 3 a.m. one night, trying different passwords on my laptop. He'd written them down on a sticky note I found in the trash. Variations of birthdays, our parents' names, even our childhood dog. The federal prosecutor assigned to the case called yesterday. Because Derek crossed state lines with the Florida property and used electronic communications for the fraud, it's now a federal case. The prosecutor, Mr. Jameson, told me Derek is looking at serious time. Wire fraud, bank fraud, identity theft, and about a dozen other charges. Your brother was surprisingly sloppy for someone running such an elaborate scheme, he said. He used his personal email for everything, kept records of his forged documents on his cloud storage, even had a spreadsheet tracking which lies he'd told to which lender. I had to laugh at that. Derek always was weirdly organized about the strangest things. The house situation is slowly being resolved. The fraudulent deed has been voided, and the hard money lender is working with prosecutors. Since they were negligent in verifying the documentation, they're likely going to have to eat the loss. They've already removed the lien from my property. But the emotional toll is something else. My parents, who live in Arizona now, are devastated. Mom keeps calling, crying, asking where she went wrong. Dad is silent, which is somehow worse. They want me to work it out with Derek, and not ruin his life. I tried explaining that Derek ruined his own life, but they're from a generation where family covers for family, no matter what. The worst part is learning how long this has been going on. The investigators showed me some of the fake contracts. Derek had forged my signature as a reference on several of them, listing me as a satisfied customer of Premier Green Solutions. He'd created fake email addresses similar to mine. Marcus.chen@hospital.org became Marcus.chen@hospital.org, note the double T, and had been corresponding with lenders as me, vouching for his business. One lender even called my actual hospital 6 months ago to verify my employment and income, since I was listed as a guarantor on one of Derek's loans. Thank God our HR department actually did their job and said they couldn't verify any loan applications without my direct consent. That lender declined Derek's application, but he just moved on to less scrupulous ones. My colleague at the hospital, Dr. Patricia Webb, has been incredibly supportive. She's actually been through something similar with her ex-husband and recommended a therapist who specializes in financial trauma and family betrayal. I started seeing him last week. It's helping, slowly. The security situation is being addressed too. I've installed a comprehensive security system, cameras, smart locks with biometric scanners, motion sensors, the works. The hospital's IT department helped me set up 2-factor authentication on literally everything. My credit is now frozen with all 3 bureaus, and I have monitoring alerts for any use of my SSN. Derek is currently under house arrest at our cousin's place. No one else would take him in, awaiting trial. He's been calling me non-stop from different numbers, leaving voicemails that alternate between apologizing, blaming me for not helping him earlier, and threatening to tell everyone what kind of brother you really are. I've saved all of them per my lawyer's advice. His business partner, Kevin, called me yesterday. Apparently, Derek had been telling him for months that I was a silent investor in the business, that I was just shy about publicity. Kevin had no idea about the fraud and is now realizing that the expansion capital Derek claimed I'd provided was actually stolen. He's cooperating with investigators and said he's planning to sue Derek separately for destruction of the legitimate parts of the business. I'm back at work, trying to focus on my actual job. The neural interface project that I presented in Munich has gotten approval for the next phase of clinical trials, which should be exciting. It is, intellectually. But emotionally, I'm exhausted. I find myself checking property records obsessively, verifying that my name is still the only one on the deed. My therapist says this hypervigilance is normal and will fade with time. I'll update again after the trial. The prosecutor says with Derek's meticulous self-documentation of his crimes, it should be straightforward. Famous last words, right? Update 2. The dice finally stopped rolling, 2 months later. Final update, because I need to close this chapter of my life and move forward. Derek's trial was last week. I say trial, but it was actually a plea hearing. His lawyer finally convinced him that with the mountain of evidence against him, going to trial would only result in a longer sentence. The federal prosecutor had emails, forged documents with his IP address, bank records, and even a recorded call where Derek admitted to Bradley, the fake notary, that he had to move fast before Marcus got back from Germany. The courtroom was smaller than I expected. Derek wore a suit I'd never seen before, probably his lawyer's advice to look respectable. He'd lost weight, and his usual cocky demeanor was replaced with something I'd never seen from him: defeat. The judge, Honorable Margaret Foster, was thorough in reviewing the charges. Wire fraud, bank fraud, identity theft, forgery, making false statements to federally insured financial institutions. The list went on for several minutes. Each charge carried potential years in prison. The prosecutor had recommended 8 to 10 years based on the amount of money involved and the sophisticated nature of the scheme. Derek's lawyer painted a picture of a desperate man with a gambling addiction who'd spiraled out of control. They'd gotten him into Gamblers Anonymous while under house arrest, and he'd supposedly been attending regularly. His lawyer read a statement from Derek expressing remorse, taking responsibility, and apologizing to me specifically. Then Derek himself spoke. For the first time in our adult lives, he actually seemed genuine. He talked about how the gambling had started small, just fantasy football, then sports betting when it became legal in Ohio. How he'd been so sure he could turn the business around with just one big win. How he'd convinced himself he wasn't really hurting me since I had so much, and never needed help from anyone. I told myself Marcus would never even notice, he said to the judge. He's got his big hospital job, his savings, his perfect life. I was just borrowing against equity he wasn't even using. But I know now that wasn't just wrong, it was evil. I violated the trust of the one person who'd always been straight with me, even when I didn't want to hear it. I was asked if I wanted to make a victim impact statement. I'd prepared one, but standing there, looking at my broken brother, I threw it out and spoke from the heart. Derek, I said, you didn't just steal from me. You stole my sense of security, my trust in family, my peace of mind. For weeks, I couldn't sleep in my own house without checking the locks 3 times. I still check property records daily to make sure no one else has tried to claim ownership of my things. You made me suspicious of everyone, even people trying to help. That's what betrayal does. It doesn't just hurt once, it keeps hurting every time you remember that someone you loved could do that to you. The judge sentenced Derek to 5 years in federal prison, with 3 years of supervised release after. He has to pay $485,000 in restitution to the various lenders he defrauded, and $50,000 to me for damages and legal fees. The judge also ordered him to continue gambling addiction treatment and financial counseling. But here's where it gets interesting, and somewhat vindicating. Because Derek's business did have some legitimate assets and contracts, about 30% of it was real, the court ordered a liquidation. His equipment, commercial mowers, trucks, trailers, was worth about $150,000. The legitimate contracts with actual clients were worth another $250,000 if someone took them over. After the primary creditors were paid, I received $400,000 from the liquidation. I didn't expect it and honestly didn't even want it at first. It felt like blood money. But my therapist helped me reframe it. This wasn't profiting from my brother's crimes, it was recovering damages from someone who tried to destroy my financial security. Kevin, Derek's former business partner, is suing him separately in civil court. Since Derek had been presenting Kevin's legitimate work as his own to secure loans, Kevin lost his entire investment in the company and his reputation in the industry. Several clients have already terminated contracts, not wanting to be associated with the scandal. I feel bad for Kevin. He really had no idea what Derek was doing. The aftermath has been complex. My parents are barely speaking to me. Mom sends texts every few days asking if I've forgiven my brother yet, and reminding me that family is forever. Dad finally broke his silence last week to tell me I should put some of the restitution money in Derek's prison commissary account. I declined. The extended family is split. Some think I did the right thing, others think I should have handled it within the family. My cousin Maria, who'd housed Derek during his arrest, told me she found gambling tickets hidden all over her guest room. Even while he was supposedly in recovery, he was having friends place bets for him. As for me, the hypervigilance is slowly fading. The biometric locks help. There's something reassuring about knowing that only my fingerprint can open my doors. The security system my hospital colleagues helped install is probably overkill, but it lets me sleep peacefully. Work has been my salvation. The Neural Interface project is exceeding all benchmarks. We're helping paralyzed patients communicate in ways we only dreamed of 5 years ago. My research lead, Dr. Webb, has been incredibly understanding about everything. She even nominated me for an Innovation Award, saying that maintaining my research quality during such a personal crisis showed exceptional resilience and dedication. I've used some of the restitution money to establish better financial security, upgraded identity protection, a more robust legal fund, and yes, even better insurance. The rest I've put into a trust that can't be accessed without multiple verifications. My therapist calls it building a fortress, and he's not wrong, but fortresses exist for a reason. I got a letter from Derek last week from federal prison. He's in a minimum security facility in Pennsylvania, about 3 hours away. The letter was short, just saying he's in a treatment program and understands if I never want to speak to him again. He ended with, "I knew you'd catch me eventually. You always were the smart one. I'm sorry I made you prove it this way." I haven't responded. Maybe I will someday, maybe I won't. The therapist says there's no timeline for forgiveness, and it's okay if that timeline is never. But I wanted to end with something positive. Last month, my hospital started a financial literacy and security program for staff, inspired by what happened to me. We've already helped 3 employees discover and stop identity theft attempts, 2 from family members. It turns out financial fraud within families is horrifyingly common. People just don't talk about it. My house is fully mine again, legally and emotionally. I've repainted, rearranged furniture, and even planted a new garden where Derek had been planning his renovation. It's my space, secured by biometric locks that recognize only me, protected by systems that alert me to any intrusion. Some days I'm angry. Some days I'm sad. Most days now, I'm just focused on moving forward. The Neural Interface project is entering Phase 3 trials next month. I have a presentation at the International Biomedical Engineering Conference in Tokyo this spring, and this time, I'll actually be able to enjoy it without worrying about what disasters are brewing at home. To those who messaged me going through similar situations, document everything. Press charges. Get therapy. And know that protecting yourself from family who would harm you isn't betrayal, it's survival. Derek made his choices. I made mine. And for the first time in months, I'm sleeping peacefully in my own home, knowing it's truly, legally, entirely mine. Final thoughts. I never thought I'd be someone with a financial fraud survivor story. You read about these things and think, how did they not see it coming? But when it's family, when it's someone you've known your whole life, the red flags look different. You explain them away. You give benefits of doubt that strangers would never receive. My biomedical work is all about signals, detecting them, interpreting them, responding appropriately. Neural interfaces succeed or fail based on our ability to distinguish real signals from noise. I spent so much time perfecting those systems for my patients, but I missed the signals in my own life. Derek asking about my travel dates, his sudden interest in my property, his offers to help, they were all signals. I just wasn't looking for danger from that direction. The financial cost of this whole ordeal, lawyers, security systems, therapy, lost work time, probably exceeded $75,000. But the education was invaluable. I learned that trust isn't a binary state. It's a spectrum, and it's okay to adjust where people fall on that spectrum based on their actions, not their titles. Derek's in prison now, and will be for several more years. Our parents are slowly coming to terms with what happened, though Mom still sends me articles about forgiveness every Sunday. The extended family has mostly moved on to other drama. My work on the neural interface continues. We're helping people who've lost their ability to communicate find their voices again. There's something poetic about that, considering how this experience taught me to find my own voice, to say no to family, to demand justice even when it's uncomfortable, to protect what I've built even from those who share my name. The biometric locks on my doors scan my fingerprint in less than a second. Each successful scan feels like a small victory, a reminder that this is my space, my life, my choice who enters it. Derek will never have that access again, no matter what signatures he forges or stories he tells. Sometimes healing looks like high-tech security systems and federal prosecutions. Sometimes it looks like saying goodbye to someone you've known your entire life. And sometimes, it looks like standing in your own home, knowing with absolute certainty that it's yours and yours alone. The house is quiet now. No unexpected visitors, no surveying equipment in the yard, no brothers planning renovations they'll never pay for. Just me, my work, and the knowledge that I chose my own security over family reputation. And honestly, I'd make the same choice again.